Welcome back to another episode of Consciously Clueless. Thanks for joining me for another Sunday solo episode. Whether it's Sunday evening, you're gearing up for the week, it's Monday morning, you're getting ready for work, or whatever day this podcast has found you, I'm really glad you're here. Before we get started, I am going to read the review of the week from Apple Podcasts. This review is one of my first reviews from Peacefire02. It is 5 stars and it's titled Excellent. I agree, Carly. It is about time you had a podcast. Loving it so far. Keep it up. I love getting reviews from people in my life because it's so validating to think that the people that know me really well are saying, yeah, you're on the right path. So thank you so much for that review. So tonight I want to talk about something that hit me on my hike today. I took myself for a hike. It was about 2.5 hours, 6.5 miles long. It was so beautiful and so peaceful. And what I realized was it was so quiet. I am someone who, is probably no surprise to the listeners, always have a podcast on or music or something is always going. And when I was hiking by myself with no one to chat with, I realized how quiet it was. And I also realized how long it had been since I had really given my space to be quiet for that long. And I started thinking about why that was. Because, well, I had 2.5 hours to think about it, but it's scary to sometimes not have noise going, to not have on music or podcast or TV or whatever it is. It can be a little scary because usually when it's quiet, that's when you start thinking about things and maybe even ruminating on things or start worrying, It can be scary to be alone with your thoughts, to not be looking at your phone, to not have music in your ears or a podcast during the drive or whatever it is, whatever your kind of go-to is. And I just realized that it had been a really long time since I'd given myself that much space for quietness. And there weren't many people on the trail, so I didn't have much interaction with other hikers during this time. So it really was just me and my boots crunching against the fresh snow and leaves still underneath, squirrels fighting, trees creaking. I mean, it was gorgeous, but it was really quiet. And it just made me start thinking about things. And I think a few months ago that would have really scared me. It can be overwhelming to be in our own head. Sometimes that's the scariest place to be, is with ourselves. That's why we look for distractions all the time. So we don't have to deal with that shit, right? Social media and listening to things and whatever. I know I do. I will be the first to admit. And I was thinking that lately I've been even using guided meditations all the time for my meditation practice, which is not bad. I love using guided meditations. I love them. But I need to remember to give myself space to just check in with my own breathing and just be quiet. And when I started thinking during all this quiet time I had to myself, I felt really good. I felt really calm and I felt really excited because this quietness allowed me to imagine some of the things I have been working towards, some of the things I'm wanting, some of the things I'm manifesting, and they felt crystal clear. Now, if you follow along with me on social media, I've started talking a lot more about manifesting the things we want in our lives because it's something that I am getting into and it feels like it is something I'm supposed to be doing and also something I'm supposed to be sharing about. And so part of that, which I will continue to talk about more, is being able to imagine the things you want and also being able to feel how it makes you feel to like get those things. So I started thinking about that. I started thinking about the relationships I wanted. I started thinking about the business growing. I started thinking about all these things and I could feel it. I could genuinely feel it. If someone would have seen me, I might have looked a little crazy because I just couldn't stop smiling once this hit me, this moment where I just felt it all and I got a crystal clear image of the things that I'm manifesting and how it made me feel. And I've been working on doing this every morning. And I sometimes have those moments too in the morning when I wake up and I'm thinking about creating the day or working towards the things I'm manifesting. I get those moments too, but this felt stronger. And this felt like I was able to be in that space for longer because of how quiet it was. There was nothing else to distract me. No phone, no nothing. Even if I wanted to be distracted, I was somewhere with no service, so there was literally nothing. There was nothing there to take me out of that space, so I felt like I was able to really be in it for longer. And it made me so happy and so comforted to really feel all the things I want, to see it happening, and to have them feel really real. Because that's the trick. It's not just wanting things, it's knowing how is it going to make me feel, and can I feel that right now? And then they're already yours. So I realized through this experience, it sounds so silly, like, oh, just don't turn on music or don't listen to a podcast or whatever, but it's so easy, especially when you get into that habit of always having something in the background. Always having something in the background. And I started to think back, and it's just been so long since I gave myself that space for that long. Uninterrupted, quiet time. And I think I need to do that more. And there's something about being outside and having that experience, but a lot of times when I'm outside and doing hikes like that, it's with people, which is great. I won't stop hiking with people or anything like that. And I also won't completely give up music or podcasts. Obviously, that's not what I'm trying to suggest because you're listening to this podcast right now. I want you to keep listening. But I also want you to think about the last time you gave yourself a long chunk of time with no sound, nothing in the background, no music, no podcast. So you were just alone with you. And some of you, maybe you're really comfortable with that and you are like, yeah, I do that every day. And I'm guessing for some of you, you just had a moment of panic to think about doing that. Because that's when we start thinking about things. And that's when we have to start dealing with things. That's what it really is. And that's scary. That is scary. But it can also be really, really amazing. And this isn't anything that I needed to go to some retreat or to some vacation to get, although those are great sometimes to help facilitate that if that's what you need. I would take a vacation or retreat right now, but it was really just leaving my house with no distractions and giving myself that time. Like, that's it. That's all it was. And then I was able to feel all these things. I could see my business growing. I could see the relationships I'm working on growing. I could see all these things so clearly, like without a doubt in my mind. I could not stop smiling. I need to give myself that space more. I want you to think about when the last time you gave yourself that space to be really quiet and to just be with yourself. Has it been a long time? Why, if it has been a long time? Why has it been a long time? Is it something you're avoiding? You don't have to start by going on some 7-day silent meditation retreat or anything like that. But what if you just gave yourself a little more space to be quiet with no distractions? Maybe you normally fall asleep to TV or something. If you fall asleep to TV, you don't do that. But maybe you do. And maybe you could start there. Maybe you turn the TV off and instead you lay in bed and you think about all the things you want to make happen the next day with quiet. Or maybe you give yourself a 10-minute break somewhere in your day where you can get away from obligations of work or family or whatever it is and just be in silence. That's the basis of mindfulness right there, is allowing yourself to be in that space, to be quiet, and to really listen to yourself and to what you need. That's what started coming up for me too, is when I started thinking about all these things I'm manifesting, what also came up was, okay, what do I need to do? And that felt really clear. Not like a to-do list per se, but just what are the things that need to happen? And they all felt so attainable in this space that I had cultivated by accident, just by hiking by myself in the woods. I really encourage you to explore, if this is something that you don't do very often, giving yourself complete silent space for a few moments a day. I'm really talking about glorified mindfulness or meditation, and if you want to try meditating and that be your space, that's okay, but it doesn't have to be quote unquote meditating, or you don't have to be sitting on a cushion or whatever it is. I mean, no judgment. I literally have a meditation cushion 4 feet from me. But I mean, it can be anywhere. It can be a walk. It can be just sitting up in the morning and taking a few breaths and being really silent without reaching for your phone, without turning on music right away. Just give yourself a few moments, wherever it fits in your day. I love getting up in the morning and doing some mindfulness practices and then blasting music. But give yourself the space when you can find it. And if you can carve out a larger chunk of time and really be with your own thoughts, you might be surprised at what comes up. Maybe there's some things that you've been avoiding for a long time and they just didn't have the chance to come out until you let them. And that can be scary. Like I said, but that can also be really good because they probably needed to bubble up and have you think about it and put it in your consciousness for a reason. It's not an accident. I hope that you can allow yourself a little bit of space and some silence and explore this idea. And if you do, I want to hear about it. I want you to tell me what it was like, what came up, or maybe you're working on manifesting too, and you did that as a part of this mindfulness. Whatever it is, I want to hear from you all. It was so funny because if you know me, getting in the car, I literally am just music right away, or a podcast. And I got in the car after this long hike of silence for 2.5 hours, and I just started driving. I didn't turn on any music or anything, and it took me a minute to realize that I hadn't even reached for my phone to turn music on. This silence felt so good, this quietness felt so good that I just kept it going the whole drive into town. So give yourself that space. You deserve it. And just start small. Just a few minutes of complete silence. No TV, no phone, no podcast. Pause this podcast maybe. No music. just yourself. Thanks for listening to another episode of Consciously Clueless. If you want to help me get this podcast into the ears of more listeners, send it to a friend, text it to a family member, post on social media, whatever it is, I so appreciate it. And if you want to help me out further, head over to Apple Podcasts, leave a review, and next week you could be read on air as the review of the week. Until next time.